Calling the City Council meeting of June 7th, 2018 to order in Council Chambers. It's approximately 7:30 p.m. Please rise for the invocation by Councilwoman Neely and remain standing for the flag salute.
As we enter into this season of abundance in our area, a season of abundant sunlight, abundant heat, abundant fruits and vegetables, abundant people all over in the streets, let us remember that chief among our responsibilities as human beings to one another in Williamsport and wherever is to be kind, to be respectful. We have lost a few people this year, both people who we knew we might be losing soon and people who we were completely surprised to lose. And one never knows when this might be the last chance you have to make an impression, to do something kind for someone, to do the right thing by someone, no matter who they are, no matter what walk of life they're in. It is an important thing for all of us to remember that we are fortunate here. We live in a beautiful city. We live in a beautiful region. We live in a region of abundance, and many are not so fortunate. And sometimes I believe that we forget to share that with one another. So be kind to one another as we go forward throughout our business. Think the best of everyone before you think the worst. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for those inspiring words, Councilwoman Mealy. I had thought myself earlier today how we've talked a lot about, there's been a lot of talk about city assets in the news and what they are and how we identify them, but some of our greatest assets are I think the greatest assets we have are the people we have, and the people that we've lost this year. When you think of the Dick Nasbergs and the Ted Lyons, Sister Henry, Richard James, they all filled a different area and a need in our community, much needed, but a lot of it centered around people and their needs and helping other people. And those are the things we need to really cherish and work and encourage others to emulate what those kinds of people have done in our midst. So appreciate that tonight, as I'm sure we all do. Approval of City Council minutes dated May 24th, 2018.
So move.
Second.
A motion and a second. Is there any discussion or questions from council? Hearing none. Mrs. Frank?
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Novello,
Yes.
Mr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Allison.
Yes. I need to note, as it's probably apparent to everybody, we have two missing tonight, Dr. Williamson and Councilman Slaughter, and they have another important meeting to attend tonight that they're both involved in, so we bid them to have a good night with their friends and family. Item 4, limited courtesy of the floor. That's for anyone who's asked to address something on our agenda. We have a really brief agenda tonight, so we have no requests tonight. Item 5, reappointments. We're going to, it's Building Code of Appeals Board reappointments to people that were on that and are still going to serve on that. We're going to put that off for 2 weeks. None of them could be here tonight. And also, it's only met twice in the last 10 years. And Mr. Girardi is coming up to the podium because he's our whole agenda tonight, basically. And perhaps you could add to that, Mr. Girardi. You mentioned to me there's certain disciplines. You can't just put anybody on this appeals board?
That's correct. The way it's set up in the International Building Code, there is a section on the Board of Appeals that tells you who should be on this board, why they meet, and so forth, and they really need to be people in certain aspects of construction, or like, we have an architect right now on the board, we have an engineer, we have a plumber. Those are the types of people who need to be on the board, because their job is solely just to interpret the code book. If I make a determination on a building and the person wants to appeal that determination, it goes in front of that board, and they only ever meet on items that are in the actual IBC.
So it's a very unique, it's not like any of our other boards or commissions. They don't set policy, they don't control or oversee any city assets or anything like that. So, Mr. Girardi he's not even clear if he needs to bring that to council, but he does as a matter of courtesy to us.
Correct.
So, we're not making precedent on this, but these are important people when we need them.
Right.
And an appeal, the person appealing has to pay $300. So that keeps away the frivolous appeals that don't have any merit from the beginning.
Correct.
So we'll deal with that in 2 weeks then, and
Yep, that's
hopefully
fine.
meet some of these people. So then we'll move to item 6 in our agenda tonight, demolition, 317 Almond Street. Mr.
Yes.
Flanagan.
What you have before you is a request for a demolition for JB Realty for the structure located at 317 Almond Street. It's located in the CC district. The structure was used for a single-family dwelling, has been vacant for many years. The owner will be constructing a parking lot for his adjoining property. At that time, a lot consolidation along with a land development would be required to come in front of council. I do have I do have representatives here for that, if you have any questions of them or myself.
Do we have a motion on this?
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion from council. Ms. McGill?
I just have one question, and it's purely for curiosity's sake. The adjoining property is another rental or is a business?
It's a business.
Okay, and what is the business? Just
Real estate, I believe, isn't it?
realty? Got it.
Okay, the Bright Laundry. It's the one on Washington Boulevard. Bright Laundry comes back, and then this one would angle back through, so he would consolidate all that into one lot.
Okay.
It starts on Washington Boulevard and end up on Almond
That was
Street.
what I thought, but I didn't have
Yeah,
time
I
to
assumed it was a
Google the
different parcel. It was my
application,
fault.
so, okay.
Mr. Noviello?
No, that was my question.
Any other questions or comments? If not, then on the motion, please, Mrs. Frank.
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mr. Noviello?
Yes.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Frank. Item 7, demolition, 255 East 4th Street, Lycoming College. Do we have a motion on this?
So move. Second.
There's a motion and a second.
Yes. What you have before you is another demolition request. This is from Lycoming College for the structure located at 255 East 4th Street. It's located in the Central Business District. Structure was used previously as a barber shop and is completely vacant. This is also part of the gateway. In order for the road to be moved over and the college to build their structure, this would have to be removed. And I do have a representative here if you have any questions of him or myself.
Questions from council? Or comments? No, I think we're all pretty familiar with what's going on
Yes.
there.
Actually, Randy, I was just going to say, for clarity's sake, the reason that this building's coming down is because, as we've all understood for a while, Franklin Street / Basin Street are being reoriented, and we'll pass right through where the building was.
That's correct. Yep.
So, yeah, but,
It's all-
yeah,
Part of
that's
the plan to make Basin Street 2 ways.
exactly. Yeah, part of the plan to make Basin Street 2 ways and to make that exceptionally awkward intersection with
Right.
a couple of 2-way streets and a 1-way street and nothing meeting quite at right angles, a little bit more
Right.
clear.
This will actually align it a little bit better and so
Right.
forth.
Yeah.
And the college also sees the southern entrance now as the main gateway into the college campus, because that's how traffic flows now off of 180 when people are coming in. So on the motion, please, Mrs. Frank.
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mr. Noviello?
Yes.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes. Thank you, Mrs. Frank. Item 8, certificate of appropriateness, 460, 462 William Street. Is there a motion?
So move.
Second.
Motion Motion and a second. Mr. Girardi.
Yes, you have a certificate of appropriate request for the structure located at 460, 462 William Street. The main structure, the two-story building, will be painted a tan color as shown on the attached sheet. I have a copy of the color. What you have is, this building is the second picture back. It's going to be basically the same color as that stone that's there now. All four sides will be painted. The brick that you see in the front will remain brick. He's not painting the windows, the trims, or anything else. This is just one color for the main body of the building. And we do have a representative here if you have any questions of him or myself.
Ms. Mealy?
Just the obvious, is that stone on the facade, and will that be painted?
All the stone in the front and on the side, yes, will all be painted. The only thing you'll see in that picture that will not be painted will be the brick that you see on that little section where the little barber sign is.
Yeah.
Yep, that's the only thing that won't be painted. And of course, you're up above, you have your shingled roof, which should not be painted either.
Got it. And effectively, of course, the color is going to be about what it already is. So, yeah, okay. Sorry, I had a bit of difficulty interpreting the check marks by the different colors.
Right. Yeah, there's actually two, because he's the same owner, the person's the same owner of the next one coming, so he gave me a bunch of different ones, and
Okay.
you'll see it's that tan that you see the body only on, it says
Yep.
Joe body only on.
Yep.
That's the color.
Okay. Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Other questions? Mr. Girardi, is there a special pre-treatment to the brick for it to,
Not that I'm aware of, it'll be cleaned and cleaned off, but there's nothing they have to put on to adhere to it prior to the painting.
okay. Thank you. Mrs. Frank, on the motion, please.
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mr. Noviello?
Yes.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Frank. Item 9, certificate of appropriateness, 150 West 4th Street. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Mr. Girardi.
Yes, this is also a certificate appropriateness for the same owner at the property 150 West 4th Street. There'll be three colors. The main body is going to be a rare gray. The windows will be a Casablanca. And the miscellaneous trim, which would be your framings around the windows and so forth, would be the navy. This is for the front of the building, which is on 4th Street, and for the portion of the building on William Street. Also, I did, which was forgot, I did not add it to this. I'll just pass this around. They're also going to be putting wall sconces up on this building. They'll be, once the conduit's up, will be painted the same body gray. That's the bricks building, very similar to what you see there. They're going to be shining up and down. He'll probably have about 10, some around the front, some around the sides. We also see it at the hospitals, Divine, if you drive by that, you'll see they have the sconces on. Williamsport Hospital also has the same sconces on. So it'll be adding just some mood lighting to brighten up the building. And we do have representation here also, if you have any questions of me or them.
Mr. Noviello.
Just out of curiosity, will each of the lighting be the same light, color light?
You would have to ask the owner, I believe so.
So there's no carousel effect, it's a nice,
Right. Right.
thank you.
Any other, Mrs. Katz?
This is going to go all the way back past the restaurant too? Are we talking the restaurant also? Right to the restaurant, okay.
The ownership of the buildings, that this particular owner goes to right past the Olive restaurant, right to the end of the Olive restaurant.
Okay. So that little indentation is yours then? Am I seeing this correctly?
You're going to go all the way back.
Is that in it or no? Good. It is, yeah, yeah, okay. Okay.
So it'll be all that building all the way back.
That's going to look good.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Mrs. Frank, on the motion, please.
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mr. Noviello?
Yes.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Frank. Item 10, certificate of appropriateness, 307 East 3rd Street. Is there a motion?
So move.
Second.
Motion and second? Mr.
Yes.
Girardi.
to clarify, the first two I gave you, and this one did go through Planning Commission. They were recommended for approval. I forgot to say that. This one here is for the Eagles Club, the Fraternal Order of Eagles at 307 East 3rd Street, to erect a 20 by 34 wood deck with a roof. The deck is to be made of pressure-treated material with lattice screening facing West 3rd Street. I have attached a copy of the building where it's going to be located. That is the old ramp and deck that was there. They will be removing that. They'll be replacing and putting a new one there. Also, when we went through the Planning Commission, they recommended that instead of doing a 2-inch tight weave on the lattice, they go with the smaller 1-inch. It's a little bit more durable, holds up. And they also requested that the deck be stained in a darker material, which the owner has agreed upon that. Okay, so you won't have a pressure-treated material there. It'll be a stained deck and stained lattice and so forth. And like I said, it'll be the 1-inch tight weave instead of the 2-inch. And it's basically for the way the rules and regulations are getting, plus a lot of people don't like smoking. It's really for people to go out, sit, and have a cigarette so they can go back into the building and not have so much smoke in the facility. Mm-hmm. And we do have representation here if you have any questions of me or him.
Questions? Mr. Noviello?
Yeah, Phil, are you going to put the handicap ramp back in the same sort of configuration?
They have one out front.
It's out front now?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Mealy?
Are you taking down the roof that's extended in?
I don't think there's a roof there where we're putting this deck. We're adding the roof.
You're going to add, okay, so you're
Right.
taking the old structure down?
Yes.
Okay, so that's coming down, okay.
Yeah, there'll be nothing there, and then they'll rebuild a new deck there, and it is a roofed patio, a roofed area.
I was hoping that was going down.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ms. Mealy?
Got it. So all of this is sort of tucked behind the main body of the Eagles Club anyway, correct?
It will be, as you're going down 3rd Street, if you're
Oh,
going
yeah.
towards the
Off
city,
to one side.
it'll be on the
Right.
right-hand side
Got
as you
it.
pass, yes.
And 20 by 34 looks like it'll be about kind of squared off, more or less what's in the picture?
Yes.
Okay, got
Yep.
it.
It'll come out all about where that, if you see that little first jig and that brick,
Yeah.
it'll be right about in that area where it will stop.
Okay, got it. All right, understood. And you said there's staining everything, the lattice and the flooring?
That is from my
So
understanding.
it
That's what-
won't be bare wood?
No,
Got
that's
it.
what the
Okay.
planning commission recommended. They wish to have the thing stained because pressure treater over time ends up looking like what you have there now.
Right.
And ends up warping and so forth. So, yes, I believe that's what it was. You may want to make that recommendation, though, that the whole thing be stained, but I believe that's what they requested,
Okay.
the whole thing to be stained.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I was actually going to ask if we could consider painting it or like opaque staining or something like that. So that seems to take care of more or less the same thing. But yeah, I don't think, our one concern would be that at some point, yeah, it winds up looking like that. So, right. But I think as long as it's sort of, tastefully stained or painted, that should make a big difference.
Yes.
Yeah. Otherwise, it seems like it'll be a nice addition for smokers and the rest of the general public, huh? So, good, thank you.
Also, thank you very much for everything you do for the city.
Any other questions? If not, Mrs. Franklin, the motion, please.
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mr. Noviello?
Yes.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes. Thank you. Mrs. Frank, item 11, certificate of appropriateness, 19 East 4th Street. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Mr. Girardi?
Yes, the last one we have is for 19 East 4th Street. This is for James V. Brown Library. They're wishing to construct a new ground sign. The size, look, colors, and location are as per the attached photos and rendering. The sign will be placed on the same location as you see where the other sign, that's a gold-looking blue face sign. It'll be very similar in the same location. I believe we talked, you might turn it a little bit, but it's basically going to be in that same location facing 4th Street as you come down. And we do have the sign individual who's doing the sign, and we also have one of the representatives from the library here also.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Girardi. Questions from Ms. Mealy?
I'm always the one with questions. This sign, it looks like, well, it looks like a dramatic improvement over the one that's there. Not that the one that's there wasn't fine, but it's going to look a bit like the one maybe out in front of the Firestone Building?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, got it. That was sort of what I was picturing. Sounds good. And the only part of it that will be changing is the part that says chess club? Like that's got it, okay. Those are some good poets you got on the bottom. I was just wondering if they were gonna be rolling through too or not. Okay, that was all I wanted to.
And it'll be one of those signs where they can't off-premise advertise anything, like all the signs we have. If they can advertise anything for their facility, what's going on, children's or whatever it is, but they can't advertise a restaurant down the street or something like that.
Got it. That sounds like a good idea.
Mr. Noviello.
A quick commending of the library for being so frugal with the sign that you have there presently. You know, this is a nice step up, and it modernizes a little bit and brings it into the 21st century, so I appreciate you. Thank you. Even better yet.
Mrs. Frank, on the motion, please.
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mr. Noviello?
Yes.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Girardi.
Yep, thank you.
Item 12, except for filing Economic Revitalization Committee meeting minutes for March 20th, 2018, Finance Committee minutes, March 13th, 2018, Williamsport Municipal Water Authority minutes, February 28th, 2018, Williamsport Municipal Sanitary Authority minutes for February 28th, 2018, and the Controller's Report for April of 2018. Is there a motion?
Second.
Motion and second. Are there any questions? Or comments on any of those minutes? And hearing crickets, Mrs. Frank on the motion, please.
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mr. Noviello?
Yes.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes. Thank you.
With my apologies, Randy, I was just looking at the clock and realizing that I'm not sure we've ever had a council meeting this short in my,
Well, okay, we'll see if we can drag it out.
I'll find a way to make up for it.
yeah, I know.
One more item, it's item
James.
13, announcements, and our next city council meeting is Thursday, June 21st, right here at 7:30. Upcoming meetings, Monday, June 11th at noon, Planning Commission, and at 4 p.m., the Rec Commission. Tuesday, June 12th at 3:30, ERC. Wednesday, June 13th, 3:30, O&E Pension. Monday, June 18th, 5:30, Government Study Home Rule. Tuesday, June 19th, 10 a.m., Blighted Property. 1 p.m., Finance Committee. 2:30 p.m., Public Works. 3:30 p.m. Public Safety, 6:30 p.m. HARB. Wednesday, June 20th, 4 p.m. Charter Commission. Thursday, June 21st, 10:30 a.m. Zoning Hearing Board. 4 p.m. Board of Health. 7:30 p.m. City Council meeting. All meetings are held in council chambers unless otherwise noted, so there's no other notations. All those are in council chambers. Are there any comments from council tonight?
Just a quick reminder that Saturday coming is the 9th annual running of the American Soapbox Derby, the Williamsport version. We're always proud to say that for our 9 years, we have been an award-winning race for 9 years running, 2 of which are the most prestigious awards that are offered in the overall international race. So we've come quite some way since our first endeavor, and we invite everybody to come out, bring your kids. It's a nice day to spend some time, and hopefully the weather will hold up for us.
Sure do. And we want to thank you, Mr. Noviello, for you put in years of time and effort to get this going and off the ground, and been a part of that team, and it's benefited our community a lot.
It's been my pleasure, and the people that I work with reinforce that every meeting we have. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else? The administration, Mayor Campana.
Mr. Vice President, members of City Council, good evening. And first of all, I'd like to thank Councilman Noviello. In regards to his leadership over the years with the Soapbox Derby, it has added to our quality of life in our great city. And I know that there's quite a few youngsters that really appreciate what you've done. So Thank you, publicly. Second comment I'd like to do is introduce our newest city employee. If you could come up here, please. Newest employee is Sergeant Mark Benner. Mr. Benner is a lifelong resident of this city, and he currently lives in the city right now. He spent some time overseas with the United States Army in regards to, is that Afghanistan?
Iraqi freedom.
Iraqi freedom, thank you, Iraqi freedom, and also in Egypt. And he's very excited to work for the city, and he'd like to make a few comments.
Yes.
And you did receive his evaluation from PennDOT?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good evening, members of council. As the mayor said, my name is Mark Benner, and I consider myself a lifelong resident of Pennsylvania, the East End section. A little bit about myself. I do have a rich history with the military, over 21 years active and reserve component, and a rich history with the state. I served at the state capitol for 2 years with the Secretary of the Senate, and 25 years with PennDOT in 3 capacities: a bridge inspector, surveyor, and highway design, and all 3 in the engineering field. And so I have worked for the federal government, the state government, and I wanted the opportunity to work locally and give back a little bit to the city where I've lived my whole life. And that's the end of my statement.
Thank you, Mr. Benner. Comments or questions from council? Ms.
I do. I have a question. From what I understand, being Chair of Public Works,
Yes.
I understand that you cannot work on any projects that PennDOT is involved with.
Yes, ma'am. Can I?
Do you realize that most of those projects is 90% of our projects that are going on right now? So therefore, you cannot do any work for us.
I'd like to actually comment on that. Actually, Rebecca worked at PennDOT, and the same situation occurred with her. We have employees, he can work on projects, he just cannot attend certain meetings. And we did that with Rebecca. We had Chelsea attend the meetings. Mark has been putting a lot of time in this week in regards to streets, and Adam can talk about that. That's something for 2018 that has been sitting for a period of time. He's also going to be the lead on the levy. So he has done his homework, and I'm sure that he's going to do a fine job. And as I said, there was a precedent in regards to Rebecca. So he will not be attending certain meetings, but definitely he will be engaged in all of these projects.
From what I understand, when he left PennDOT, he was given a no conflict, no compete clause in his contract. So therefore, he cannot do things for us. So I want to understand what he can and cannot do. We're paying him a $61,000 salary, which is almost $20,000 more than what Rebecca got, okay?
Excuse me, you're wrong.
You said,
She received the same amount.
no, she did not.
Yes, she did.
She made $48,000.
She received $61,000.
She received more money when you put her on with streets and parks, but as far as the engineer goes, no. And, you know, that's a record. That's on the record, all right?
Adam, could you come up here, please?
I mean, you're putting
And-
somebody in a
and
position,
the other-
you're putting somebody in a position. What I find a little bit disturbing is if this man cannot work on the projects that we are involved in. We have the Gateway, we have 4th Street that's going to be started. We have so many other streets that are connected with PennDOT.
If you would
4th
have,
Street in Newbury.
if you would have read his resume,
I
which,
read his
did you
resume.
did
I
you read
read
his
his-
engagement with West 4th Street?
I read his
He actually
resume.
designed that.
I read his
so I-
resume, but can he not, what can he do?
Well, he's going to be doing a lot of responsibilities that the former engineer did not do. And Adam, if you'd like to respond. Well, I'm going to tell him what he's going to do.
At this point, he's started the 2018 street project, determining what streets we're going to pave under the 2018 project, what streets are CBDG eligible. He started into the levy. I mean, it's,
Graphius Run. Graphius Run is definitely one.
yeah, the Graphius Run's gonna be on his list of items. He started working with John Grado. I recently found out that he cannot attend certain meetings at PennDOT. It's still a work in progress.
It will be a work in progress.
And ma'am, if I could, I talked directly to the State Ethics Commission, as I was advised by the leadership at PennDOT, and what they told me is pretty much you can't, that, just what they have been saying, you cannot attend meetings that PennDOT officials are at and take votes, be a voting member. So we've got someone else to fill that role set in place already. And that's,
I still find it kind of a little bit disturbing.
that's what they told me.
Anybody else? We're not familiar with the legalities of the no competition clause, so I think I'm sure you can understand the confusion and a little bit of trepidation that we have about these projects. It's probably something we need to explore some more, because to say that there are meetings that he can't attend with PennDOT, that we will have someone in his place.
And the same thing, actually, as I said earlier.
Yeah.
To the former engineer as well, that we found out later on. But this is what the administration is going to do. We're going to give you a list. You have his job description. You should have received that a while ago. We will give you an additional list of responsibilities that he will have. And believe me, there's enough projects, which is good for this city, that this engineer is going to earn his keep. And I'm very confident that that will be the case.
And I don't doubt that at all. I think we're thinking of the transition period, because the main difference that I see with Ms. Halliday was we had a lot more of John Grado at that time. And when there's somebody of his stature and knowledge that can
Definitely.
fill in and go to those meetings.
Well, are you aware that he's working 1 day a week?
Yes.
Mr. Grado.
Yeah.
He's working 1 day a week, and tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, we have a meeting with Ms. Holliday. We're going to have a work session. We're requesting all the information that she's had
Right.
from her office, and we're going to sit down and break down everything. Definitely. It was a learning curve for her.
Certainly. But I guess, I'm not speaking for the rest of the
She had like several
council.
months to work with John Grado.
Yeah.
And the thing that is really concerning us, we have a lot of major projects coming here, that if you can't be present for these projects, it is very, I feel very uncomfortable if you're not going to be there to answer the questions that we may need to have answered. And I really don't think Chelsea is the person that you should put in charge. She doesn't have the experience, and that's a terrible position to put her in.
I'm not putting her in that position, to be frank with you. She volunteered. And she has a lot of ability. I have a lot of confidence in her. Adam will be attending these meetings as well, because he's actually Mr. Benner's supervisor. So they're going to be working together. I have a lot of confidence in the team of individuals that we have, that we're going to accomplish these. Because at the end of the day, it's on me. Ultimately, it's on me, because these employees answer to me. And if I have to attend meetings, I will attend meetings as well. But I understand your concern as well, but I believe we can get through this.
So I'm not speaking for I'm sorry. Ms. Mealy?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up. We were talking briefly about Chelsea's qualifications to attend meetings, and Chelsea obviously has her own unique qualifications, and I think she's definitely been an asset to the city so far. And I think that as she grows into her position, because we all know that it takes probably better than a year to really get comfortable in a position, you know, and to work in a new environment, especially in Chelsea's position where we more or less, that's a new role in the city. But speaking of Chelsea's qualifications to attend meetings in place of the city engineer, I also need to ask a little bit about Mr. Benner's qualifications. I understand that he has a bachelor's of engineering, correct?
Yeah.
Which means that best case scenario, what would the timeline be for becoming actually an engineer?
I am, by this fall, I'm going to be taking, the first step to that process is taking what they call the FE exam. And I'm going to take a prep course before that and taking the exam early fall. And hopefully get that out of the way. Once you pass that, the clock starts ticking, and you have 4 years to take your PE exam, and then that's it.
And you need to sort of work under an engineer during those 4 years, correct?
Yes, have one sign off that you've done work, yes.
And what's our intention there?
Excuse me?
Who is the engineer that you'll be working under?
That part I'm not clear on right now with the city. At PennDOT, that process is a lot easier.
Right.
But as for city operations, I'm not sure how that flows.
Okay, so
If it's the consultants that qualify for that?
that's sort of my fear, sir, is that with no offense whatsoever to your obvious qualifications in other areas, I'm a little nervous that we won't be able to provide you the opportunity to train that you would need to
Rebecca,
service
she
as an
worked-
engineer.
Yeah, Rebecca worked hand in hand with Larson Design and basically we have so many projects that Larson's working on.
Right.
She was able to fulfill that position working with somebody that we outsource some of the work to.
I guess my understanding was when we hired Rebecca, Mayor Campana, Rebecca came to us with a plan outlined to achieve her certification. She understood how many hours she needed. She knew that who she was going to be working under. She knew who would be signing the paperwork.
Well, she didn't-
My understanding is that we haven't quite achieved that step
And
here.
she did not start the process of taking that exam. That was never completed in the year's time, just to let you know.
I did ask for
Mr.
that.
Campana, I'm not
I
looking
did ask
back
for
on
that.
past issues that we may have had with other engineers. I'm looking forward to issues that we might have with engineers, with engineers who are not yet engineers in our employ. I mean, it's quite one
I mean,
thing to
if
look
you
back
wanna-
and say, look, we made a mistake.
If you
But
want
quite
to,
another thing to say, here, let's make it again.
well, we're not going to do that. He's going to be working with Larson Design. If you want an engineer, as I said before, if you want a PE, you better put $100,000 in your budget if that's what you want, because that's what they make. We have somebody that's qualified, someone that's hardworking, someone that has a rich military history in this country. That's something that also, when you hire people, as Alan Anderson said, you have to really take that in consideration. That's a preference. He's going to be working with Larson Design, as I said, and he's going to take his test in the fall, so he's working towards his PE. And as he stated earlier, and in a letter that I sent you, this is just not an attempt for him to work here for a year or so. He wants to be part of this family for a number of years, and I think that's a good thing. Oftentimes you have employees, they go from job to job. We need some longevity in this position. Now, I don't think you're going to be around for 40 years like Mr. Grado, but I think we have to take that into consideration.
But with all due respect, Mayor Campana, even if he were to work for us for 5 years, he would still not be an engineer. Do you see what I'm saying? Even if we get some longevity in the position, even if we have an employee for 5 years, ideally for the next 20, that would be terrific. But do you see what I'm saying? We're still 5 years out from actually having an engineer in our employ.
If I may, I accepted this position on the contingency that I would have it within 5 years. And mathematically, yes, that is possible.
Oh, I know, that's what I'm saying, but I'm saying that even if you do have a fair amount of longevity as an employee with the city,
Right.
we're still 5 years away from having an engineer.
Well, that is true.
Right. And then I guess the one other question that I would have is, Mr. Campana, you say that that it would cost us $100,000 a year to hire an engineer. And I don't dispute that. I think that is certainly the going rate for an engineer. But help me to understand, if we're paying Mr. Benner, and in all fairness, this is not necessarily a place that I want to have discussions about salary, but this seems to be where we're having it, so this is where we have it, I guess. If we're paying Mr. Benner $61,000 a year, and Mr. Benner is also the Assistant Director of Streets and Parks? No, Mr. Benner is not the Assistant Director of Streets and Parks. Okay. So that is already then a $13,000 annual increase over the engineer that we previously were paying.
I don't know where you're getting these numbers, to be frank with you, because we've talked about $61,000 that Rebecca was making. She was going to make an additional $5,000 in 6 months as part of the evaluation. Those are the true numbers.
I'm happy to go back and look at the salary detail
numbers.
and review the numbers, Mr. Campana. I'm more than happy to do that. I had looked at them, but frankly, my memory is not perfect, so I will look into it again, and I'm happy to broach that subject again. My question actually follows from there. If we're looking at $61,000 for an employee who's not the city engineer, but rather a city engineer in training, and then we're also bringing in Mr. Grado 1 day a week, correct?
Yes.
And what are we paying Mr. Grado?
You'd have to speak to HR. I can't answer that right now.
Okay, I guess my point is that we're getting kind of close to that $100,000 mark, if I had to guess. If we're paying someone who's not an engineer $61,000 a year, right? And then we have a 20% time employee who is an engineer. So my assumption would be that we're looking at paying him another $20,000 at least, correct? Annually. So then you're up to $81,000 a year.
He's not taking health insurance. I think you need to take that into consideration.
But
So
Mr.
you're going to
Benner
say,
is,
Mr. Benner, Sergeant Benner, I'll give you the respect for that. Sergeant Benner is not receiving health care. So I take that into consideration because, honestly, I don't see a lot of ideas of bringing other revenue into this city. So this is something that I have to wrestle with every day as the mayor of this city. So I take that in consideration when I hire somebody. He's not taking health insurance, so we're saving an extra $25,000.
Mr. Campana, what other applications did we receive for this position?
We previously received applications beforehand, and I was not satisfied with those applications, and Sergeant Benner applied for the position, and as mayor of the city, as I've stated before, and in the letter that I wrote to you and other council members, Greg Forsman, Todd Heckman, Dave Young, I can list other employees, Joe Girardi, etc. It is the right of the mayor to appoint individuals at will employees. So
I'm not disputing that, Mayor
legally,
Campana.
I'm able to do that, and I did that this time.
Right. No one is disputing that. What we're disputing is perhaps the wisdom of the choice in this case, not that Sergeant Benner is not an exceptionally qualified individual in a number, as I said, of areas.
Ms. Mealy,
But what I'm curious to know is when we're talking about what it would cost us to hire an engineer, when we're talking about the health care that comes with an engineer, all of that, I'm curious about our pool of applicants and exactly how that pool of applicants sorted out. Do you understand what I'm saying?
well,
It's
yeah,
not a question.
I understand what you're saying, and I'm going to limit these comments. I'm not going to stand up here for 2 hours or an hour or 45 minutes defending an individual that I feel is appropriate for the job. It is the right of the mayor to do that, and I'm not going to stand here anymore. I answered your questions. I thought I was very respectful, and that's the end of the day. This is someone that I appointed, and I think personally, I think you're making a scene here on television because you wanted to appoint the engineer. And several council members wanted to appoint the engineer, and that's not your legal right to do so. So I appointed who I felt was best for the position, and end of story. That's it. I'm not going to say any more. Thank you.
Sounds good to me.
Mr. Henderson, did you?
Sorry, Joel.
I was only going to ask, Mr. Mayor, and I know we don't want to have any more back and forth here, but I did notice that it seemed that you intentionally did not introduce him as the city engineer. Newest employee? Okay, all right. That's what I was wondering, if there was a different position, different title or something like that. But you are in fact appointing him as the city engineer. I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Mr. Noviello.
Okay, Mr. Benner, first off, I want you to realize none of this is personal, none of this is directed at you as an individual.
Right, I understand.
We're talking about circumstances.
I understand that.
Okay, thank you. A couple questions, maybe Norm can answer one, maybe Mr. Nichols can answer one. First off, Bill, is there an insurance buyout figure associated with this position? Frankly, just to kind of set the stage for this, I've always been opposed to the idea of paying people to not take our insurance policy.
That's a good question. I'm not sure if that's been discussed with HR and what the resolution was that.
Again, just
And that's something I can find out
I'd
if that
appreciate it.
was
Again,
addressed. I mean, you know, that's been offered before to other individuals, so.
Yes, that was
I
why I
don't know.
asked.
That's an HR question. I can get back to you on that.
I'd appreciate that. And Norm, if you would, for just a moment, again, not to cast any aspersions on Mr. Benner, but if he does not have what we are looking to be the specific qualifications that we're looking for here, if in fact he or anyone in that position is involved in negotiations with our contractors, what have you, I would assume that an engineer at a certain point has to certify the things that are being addressed and dealt with. Is that right?
He cannot sign any documents as a professional engineer.
All right, so then are those documents then even valid if that's the case?
Depends, I couldn't answer that without looking at the
Yeah,
individual
I
document.
understand.
There may become a point where certain documents, we would have to bring in either Mr. Grado to review and sign, or hire it out to a professional engineer.
I tend to see, you know, future litigations here that wouldn't necessarily be expected.
I don't think it's so much a litigation issue, but obviously, Mr. Brenner knows he cannot sign and put the letters P after his name. There's no question about that. Whether or not a specific document requires it as a matter of law, then we have to make sure that a professional engineer executes that document.
Okay, one of my concerns. And Mr. Mayor, if you would, just for a quick moment, you mentioned that we'd be looking at someone for probably $100,000, and I certainly agree with that 100%. Where will we get the $100,000 5 years from now?
Employee, you want to keep someone that's a PE, you make that decision 5 years from now.
I'm just curious. You may mention that, so I wanted to bring that up. The other reference that you made that kind of caught my attention was, I'm not so sure, maybe somebody can quickly correct me, Norm's here. It's not my understanding that city council as a body is responsible for actually bringing revenue into the city. This body is a legislative body. I would assume that members of the administration are responsible for seeking opportunities for revenue, and that then they are then afterwards brought forward to the council, at which point we adjudicate our issues.
Personally, I think it's our city. Yes, you are the legislative branch, we're the executive branch, and oftentimes the executive branch has been questioned in regards to our daily operations, but I personally feel that all of us answer the taxpayers. All of us need to be creative. I have tried, and I lose sleep nights because of financial situations. So I'm trying to be as creative as possible to try to bring dollars into the city, and we're not on the same page in regards to doing that. I do not relish the thought in the fall that I may have to lay off employees. These are people that have families, that have real lives, that have bills to pay every day, and that's something I may have to do. So if I seem a little zealous in regards to trying to bring monies in, believe me, it doesn't make me feel good. I'm trying my best. I love this city. I know you do too. But we got to be on the same page of trying to bring some dollars into this city, or there's going to be layoffs. And I've said that before. Maybe some people feel that it's a business, that's what you do. And you do that, but you're affecting lives. And that's why I'm trying to be creative, whether it's a casino or whether it's water, getting money from the authority. The last thing I'd like to say is, please remember, all this economic development, if we look at $100 million that has taken place during this administration, if it wasn't for the parking authority, you wouldn't have it. And parking authorities, that's what they're used for. They're used for economic engines to help. They have that ability to do so. So please, and I don't always believe what I read, okay? But it's never been my intention to, quote, take from an authority. We have to remember, these individuals that are on authorities, they're not rubber stamps to me. They're intelligent people. And if anybody says that they're rubber stamps or I'm raiding monies, etc., I think that's an insult to the people that serve on those committees or those authorities. They're smart people. We're just trying to get this city moving and getting a lot of economic development, and we've done that, okay? So I don't want any animosity with city council. I think you've seen in my 11 years as mayor, I've been very active. I have a lot of energy, I still do. These things, I'm just trying to look outside the box with other cities, and I'm not condemning you. You have your own positions, your own opinions, and that's fine. And personally, I think that's good government. But this is what I wrestle with every night when I go home. I think, what can I do to try to bring some more monies in? Because people are taxed out. They are. I have 80-year-old ladies that call me on the phone and say, Mayor Campana, do whatever you can. I'm going to lose my house. I'm behind 2 years in taxes. I can't afford it anymore. Thank you.
I just had a couple things. If we're going to close the discussion that we weren't really counting on having, but some of the things, I think that some of the differences are philosophical, and you mentioned using the parking authority as a driver of economic development and an engine there. And that is one model, but there are other models that are being used around the country. That's an older model, and it works, but there are other cities that are exploring other ways. There's a lot of research out there in places they're doing it, and some of the places like smart cities and different groups like that have different things. So I think some of it's that. And as far as the hiring of Mr. Benner, who, again, you're not the focus of this, it's just, as is a lot of times, we've had a difference about process. There's no denying that. And that's where some of our conflict comes in. And you rightfully see your responsibilities as mayor and a way to respond to them. It's not illegal. It's not underhanded in that respect. But I had questioned earlier in the process, like, what kind of search committee do we have? How much advertising did we do? And we never got those answers, so we're not sure. You mentioned you had some applications, but we're interested in those kinds of things because we get questioned from people who follow closely. How was this decision made? What was the pool of applicants? So what was the possibilities of getting someone in some midterm of development? So, of course, we don't know any of that, and HR can't divulge particulars to us, but
I'm going to reach out to you as I've done before. I would like to resume those meetings every 2 weeks. The leadership of council had with the mayor, and we have taken a hiatus for a period of time. I said it once before, I will reach out again. If you could speak to the president, be glad to meet you in 2 weeks from now. I don't care, it's downstairs here, up in my office, alabasters, etc. I think the taxpayers deserve that. So if you're interested, we could funnel maybe some of that out.
Yeah,
Uh,
would be good.
So a lot of these questions can be answered, and there's certain things I believe in transparency, but there's certain things that I think to protect individuals' reputations, et cetera, that it would be proper to speak when the press isn't there.
That's fine. And I think we're all aware of the tough budget we're gonna have, because we've had forewarning from Mr. Nichols for a while that things were the noose was really tightening on a lot of things. And I think council has raised taxes a few times, and there was no pleasure in it, and absolutely no desire to do that, but we saw the need, and we did it when we felt it was needed, and we put the money in the budget, and the money's been spent. So apparently, we did need those increases at those times. Otherwise, we would have a healthy fund balance now with the amount the taxes have been raised. So it's unfortunate that we're having another crunch here, and we're not looking forward to raising taxes. I'm not saying that we are going to. We still have a half a year to go yet, and Mr. Nichols might hit the lottery and pay everything off for us, so.
I'd have to be one
Okay,
heck of a
not
lottery
then,
ticket.
not then, that won't happen, okay.
Big lottery.
But maybe something else will happen. But in any case, yes, communication would be good, and we'll work on that. So, any other comments? Okay, we'll go to comments from the public tonight. Please approach the podium and give us your name and address.
Vice President Allison, council members, Dennis Lohner, 226 Eldridge Street. I've got two issues. Eldridge Street, Sheridan Street was recently paved. Nice job. There's utility cuts in it already. Now, that's a waste of taxpayer money, okay? We're paving streets and turn around and they're digging them up. Hawthorne Avenue, looks like somebody dropped grenades all the way up through it. The utility came in, dug up, did their work, paved it, and there's a pothole right next to what they paved. I don't understand how they couldn't take a couple shovels and fill that pothole in. That is my, you know, and I'm not alone. A lot of people in the East End area are very upset over what's going on here. We're paving streets, they're being dug up. Yes, utilities repaving them, but we paid for that paving to begin with through tax dollars. And to me, that's just a waste of money. There's got to be some kind of planning at the beginning of the year, sit down with utilities. This is what we're paving. This is when you come in and do your utility work. After that, there's moratorium on the road. You can't pave, you can't tear it up within 5 years. You know, that's my thing. And I'm not alone in that idea, because there's a lot of people in the East End that are very upset. Union Avenue was repaved, very nice job. Within a year, it was dug up. So I just wanted to bring that forward. And I was really mad last week when I drove down Sheridan Eldridge Street and saw that. Now, granted, they were small utility cuts, okay? It was still the fact that it was dug in there. And it wasn't to dig up and do work. It was to replace a utility cut that had already been there. All they did was came in and fill it in. And on Hawthorne, I retired from the state. If we'd have done what happened on Hawthorne Avenue, Sun Gazette would have been taking a picture, putting it in the paper, you know, here's PennDOT paving this road and leaving a pothole next to it. So, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lohner. Mr. Duarte?
Yeah, I talked with Mr. Lohner before on some of these issues. One of the main issues he's talking about is typically we do put a moratorium on the road for X amount of years, and we do have the gas company, water company go through prior to us going through or them going back through and repaving. What can happen, though, from time to time, if there's an emergency break, we got to allow them in there, even if we have a moratorium or not, they'll have to go in and cut. Not saying they cut the whole entire street, but you will find from time to time there are some cuts. Hughes Street, that's what happened in Hughes Street. We repaved that street. No more than probably 3 months later, there was a sinkhole because 2 sewer lines collapsed. Water Authority is not going to go through and replace everything prior to us doing a road, and neither will the gas company. They will try, but it does happen. So on occasion, you will have that. And I do agree, I think if there is a hole next to an area they patched, it doesn't take them much to throw a little bit out there and fix it.
Can I say something again?
Sure.
Drive off. Not only is it there at the top towards Campbell Street, the other side of Campbell, they just paved an inlet, and there's a pothole right next to the inlet. That's not acceptable.
Right. I'm not disagreeing with you, and Adam will go out and take a look at it.
Your inspector is, or somebody out there, I would imagine you have one,
Yes.
should be telling you guys to go pothole.
And that is, Streets and Parks does go out and fill the potholes, and if Dave does come across them, he will notify Adam. Best thing to do is you find one, notify Streets and Parks.
Unfortunately, we're talking about all from my camera.
Right.
I put 20 ton of blacktop down there one day, and that same day, we couldn't get any more top mix. The issue is, if HRI is not willing to give it to us, we can't get it. That's who holds the state contract. I can't buy blacktop unless it's under state contract using Liquid Fuels money. Liquid Fuels pays for all the street repairs. It's not actually tax money, it's Liquid Fuels. So I have to follow the rules that are set by PennDOT.
Just to respond further to your concerns, those of us that work in the Public Works Committee over the last 6 years have made some dramatic changes with regard to how streets are paved. We require a new cut system that allows these cuts to be done in a better way, allows them more longevity. And prior to our committee taking over that responsibility, any utility that made a street cut was only responsible for maintaining that street cut for 2 years. Our committee changed it to 5 years. We changed the manner in which they do the cuts as well. We have to also bear in mind that we're looking at a system, infrastructure that's well over 100 years old in some cases. So when we bring in heavy-duty equipment to pave a street, more often than not, we end up causing damage to some of that infrastructure. And 2 weeks after we pave a street, somebody's telling us that their basement is full of water or that they have a gas leak. We have got to go out at that particular moment. And I think, Bonnie, if you can help me, I think over the last year, I'm guessing, and it is a guess, I bet we've had close to a dozen requests of emergency situations alone. Sometimes multiple cuts on the same street that has just been paved. These are issues that we've brought up to these utilities a number of times. And Adam, spoke correctly as far as I'm aware, as far as getting amosite and such is not as easy a task as people might think it is. It isn't like going to Lowe's and buying 25 pounds of amosite and throwing it. It just simply doesn't work that way. I wish it did work that way, but it doesn't. There's a lot of more intricacy to these things, and I was more unaware of until I became a part of the Public Works Committee. And believe me, in 4 to 5 years' time, I got a major education on how some of these things operate. But I certainly see the issue. I live on a street that was just paved less than 3 years ago, and we have a cut in front of my house as well. So we're all experiencing the same kinds of things. But we are limited to some extent as to what we can do. We have accommodated numerous emergency cuts in the middle of the winter when we've already designated and put into ordinance that they cannot cut into those streets through the winter months. But when somebody's house is endangered or there's a safety factor involved, we've got to follow through whether we appreciate it or not. Now, that's not an excuse, but it's a reason. Thank you.
We do have a plan. We do sit down with the utilities, and they give us their streets that they're going to be working on, and the city has a list of what we're going to be working on, and we do try to combine everything as best as we can, but sometimes the best laid plans just don't work. Okay, the emergencies come up, and you think we don't get frustrated when we know a street has just been paved, and the time and energy and money that has been put into that, and then they're going to come along and cut it. It really is frustrating, it really is, but we really try to make sure that we save as much as we can.
I understand the emergency cuts. Trust me, I work for the state, I know what it was, we had the same issue. My point is, when you pave a street, they're not just for emergencies. They're coming back in, digging up 3
If that happens, then we're not aware of that,
No.
because that is not what we are given.
No.
Because this all has to come for permits.
That's correct.
You know, they have to come for permits. So therefore, something like that should not have been allowed. If that did happen, then Dave
Correct.
would have gotten back to you.
Right. And I'm thinking, you're talking where at? Because I don't know, Denny, more than happy to take a look and investigate what's going on, but I'm not aware of that, to be honest.
They paved Union Avenue from Franklin to Penn Street, did slip-form curbs on one end.
Yep.
The other end, they came back within a year and dug it out.
That's, yes, I know exactly what you're talking about on that particular project, okay?
And they just milled it this year, I believe, and I'm not sure if it's been paved. Yes, it's been paved.
Yeah, it was paved and it was milled and repaved. Yes, and original pavement was us.
Yes, and
That's where you're talking about, yes, yes. I know what you're talking about, yes, sir. He is correct on what he's saying. Yes, there was a road that we did pave, they went back through and dug it up and then repaved it again.
I remember when we were going through all that process.
Correct.
There was a lot that was going on.
Right, and
with
that's when
infrastructure and everything.
Public Works decided to sit down and talk and try to straighten this out so it would not happen again, but that's what did occur. And I'm not denying that.
Right,
That's
it
exactly-
did,
I'm
it
sorry
did.
to keep talking, but my issue is too is, again, you paved Sheridan Street and Elder Street, looks nice, okay? I'd have done both sides of Elder Street, but it looks nice. They cut into that new paving just to fix a previous cut. It's not like they had to fix something, all they were doing was coming back in as a subcontractor and filling in what was previously cut, and they cut into that new paving. Why did they just stop at the end of the repaving? Why did they have to cut into what was already paved? Granted, it's not a large section, it's just the fact that people drive by and see it, and trust me, I've heard from more than one people about it,
Right,
so, thank you.
yep, yep.
Up next. Name and address, please.
It's been a while since I used one of these. My name's Tiffany Deemer. I live at 940 Hollywood Circle with my husband and 2 young children. Recently, we've been following the local government and politics here in the city more closely than ever. I began researching a lot of the topics, the board agendas, concerns from each council meeting, public board meetings, and so on. Specifically, I'm looking for the city's strategic plan. I was able to locate and read the 2017 Multi-Municipal Comprehensive Plan adopted by council in October of 2017. Although I feel the plan is a great start, I am curious as to what specific plan the city itself has adopted. What is the action plan? What goals and priorities are critical now? Where are we currently? Where do we need to be in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, so forth? I get the sense, especially after tonight, there's a lack of a shared vision, clearly defined goals, and an action plan developed as one cohesive unit. This is absolutely critical to progress Williamsport forward. How can we ever truly gauge whether or not we're making progress, both culturally and fiscally, to improve the quality of life here in Williamsport without having goals and objectives to tie back to a return on investment? It appears that city money and taxpayer dollars are being used for major projects. However, city constituents are now looking to see how are the investments making headway in a fiscal return. The purpose of having a strategic plan with the shared vision, goals, and action items is to ensure that money being spent is being spent wisely. This plan should be a living document that is well communicated and transparent to all city residents and acts as your guiding force when making future decisions for the city. This leads me to my second concern. I want to thank some council members who are very transparent about what is happening in the city. However, I do believe this is an area that needs to strengthen for the entire administration. Transparency is key to building trust and rapport with all city constituents. In addition, I am curious if an ethics committee exists and what type of legal and ethical training is provided to appointed board members. I understand this can be a thankless job at times. However, in today's society, there should be a high level of legal and ethical understanding for all board members to ensure that no laws are broken. I'm deeply concerned in regards to recent events related to the potential lease option of the Water Authority. As some have stated, this will help generate revenue without raising taxes. I do have one statement in regarding this. My husband and I chose to live where we did, knowing full well what our taxes were. We made that choice, and if ever questionable, we can have our property reassessed. I cannot, however, choose my water rate, and water is a necessity we cannot live without. In addition, I am discouraged, though, by the lack of reappointments and vacant positions remaining on some of the boards. And finally, my third point, which will hopefully appeal to the hearts and parents in this room and the community. Within the Williamsport School District, there are currently an estimated 2,700 students in grades K through 6 and approximately 1,800 children whose ages range from 0 to 5, according to the latest census. Within the entire county, more than 18% of the population falls under the age of 18. That's nearly 20,000 children. Although all of the developers have done an incredible job in the city with new businesses, the arena, restaurants, breweries, bars, I really feel that we are missing out in tapping into the potential of young children and their families. As a child growing up, I did spend many days at the Children's Discovery Museum, running through the shadow box, playing doctor, pretending I worked for WNEP, so forth. I had a rush of nostalgia pass over me as I walked past its doors for the first time in many years, and I'm sure everyone in this room can think of something that existed here in the city that they still wish existed today. I understand that business is business and the building itself requires so much work to bring it up to codes. However, I am appealing to the city, the developers, and the community. Right now, in order to provide my kids those types of educational learning opportunities, I have to drive to Lewisburg or Binghamton or Philly or Pittsburgh. Not all families have that luxury. And I know some families who have chosen to move to Lewisburg or State College to provide their kids those types of opportunities not present here. Williamsport has always prided itself on its strong family values, and I would much rather give my money to this city to provide my kids those opportunities than to another. And to tie back to the 2017 Multi-Municipal Comprehensive Plan developed for the greater Williamsport, this city needs to expand and capitalize on educational opportunities, not just for the adults, but for the future generations to come. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Deemer. I would just say we did hire a city planner who would be essentially and integrally involved with the strategic plan. And we do have the person there that, if given the task, would jump into that. So I think we support that 100%. Any other comments from the public? If not, then I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So move.
Second.
And a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Leave the executive session.
You had to go, yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I needed to announce we're having an executive session for legal matters and litigation.